Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to the Council on Future Conflicts, episode 457. We're talking Middle East mess and domestic damage. Today, I am joined, as always, by Mr. Joseph Dolio. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And Watcher, he is the producer extraordinaire. But the good news is Watcher's not in the farm anymore. He's not old McDonald on the farm now. He is Watcher on the road. So pray for him for his drive later today. But for now, he's just sucking up energy drinks and trying to avoid Trenda Aragua commandos that are exfilling out of Aurora, Colorado. Joe,
I'm not going to say that I've got my pistol next to my desk, but I definitely have my pistol next to my desk.
Well, I call that like every day. So,
it'll be so nice to be able to have firearms within my home again at some point in the near future. So, Joe, how's life treating you?
It's not bad. We got a few inches of snow the other day, but nothing major, and not much of it's going to stick after today. It's going to be in the 40s today, so we shall see. I think all these people predicting that Montana winters were going to get me kind of didn't really not really panning out that way. But it's okay. All is good. We're getting ready for the holiday. Got a big Christmas party to go to on Friday, which I always look forward to a good party. So cool stuff.
Joe, I'm going to be back in the States here soon. You got to recommend me like a good holster for a Glock 19, just in case I might need to, carry one around from time to time.
Okay, well, anything but a Black Hawk Serpa. So,
ironically, I think that's literally what the military issues people, those big old plastic clunky deals. Yeah.
I would go with seriously, Red Balloon. It just takes a while to get, but they're worth it.
Well, clearly, I'm not going to be able to get anything that takes a while to get. So just be thinking about it. And, Chad, if you guys got any suggestions, let me know. All right.
Safari Land.
How you doing, brother? I mean, it's getting cold there, but it's warmer today, right?
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. We're everyone's bracing for some winter storm, but I just checked the weather and I don't see it. So whatever. It's been pretty good. We started our week with lunch with the Stan family, and that was pretty good. So kind of set the tone for the rest of the week. Popped into Shield Arms a couple days ago and dropped off some class schedules and chatted with the guys there. Pretty good stuff. You know what? Life's good in Montana.
Yeah, I can imagine. Our favorite Montanan camouflage clothing maker, is dropping some heat on Twitter, and we were talking about that. I tell you, the different camo patterns that are available, it's almost like there's too many. It's almost like there's too many. It's like paralysis by analysis when you start looking at all the camo patterns. You're like, which one should I buy? But if I buy that one, will I regret it later? And would I even wear that one? It's kind of cool just to have, but I would never wear it. It's
right. Joshua, no, I did not come away with another knife. They haven't made another knife, so I have all that they make. So I'm good at the moment. Axes is a different story. And yes, don't tell Fed Up. You're right. Don't tell her. And by the way, I see Alpha Charlie Concepts in there. Note the shirt, Alpha Charlie. It's yours. He wore my shirt in his video the other day. I figured I'll wear his shirt in mine. So,
Watcher, you're on the road. How else besides that? How are you doing?
Doing good. Excited to be home just in time for Christmas. So should be nice.
Anything else?
Well, not that I can think of. Not really. Good to see you, chat. We're in for another exciting show today. And I guess we'll say that a lot of you have already mentioned drone apocalypse and the thing, and I've been getting an awful lot of pings of oh my God, Watcher was right. Don't act so surprised, you guys.
Right?
Uh,
It always surprises me when people seem shocked that we were right about something.
but yeah, it seems pretty obvious at this point. This is all red team bullshit in order to scare people enough to allow them to pass their drone ban, or almost drone ban. They've been trying to pass it for 2 years now, and it keeps getting pushed back. But put enough pressure on blue states and get their citizenry screaming for it, and suddenly it looks a lot more possible.
You know, I'll be honest with you. I don't know that it. I don't. The irony is I don't think this was a massive drone kind of thing. I think it was some drones, and then also a lot of, you know, misidentifications. But ultimately, you know, I think they really screwed up by not putting an announcement up, because I'll be honest with you, I don't think that the mass hysteria that they got was anywhere on the list of intended consequences. You know,
they just happen to have a drone up that would ban all civilians from being able to own and operate drones right after they got exposed by drones 7 or 8 times.
Well, it depends on who did it, right? Like if it's the military who did it, or you know, then if it's a federal law enforcement, then that may be, but ultimately they're not gonna. That drone bill will not pass, so they don't have the for it. So I'm not really worried about that one. Anyway, it's really interesting. I think I got the feeling that it was, my feeling was I just didn't quite understand what was going on. And I think that's probably about right. I don't know that anybody really knew what was going on, but at the same time, it's been interesting to see how this plays out. And I think it's an object lesson in terrible reporting, hysterical, low information observers, and a complete ineptitude of political and government communication. So it's that kind of perfect storm,
Yeah, Squishy Hunter, I saw this, and it was very good.
Yeah. All right. Okay, let's jump right into it, shall we? We got a lot to talk about today, guys. Our 2 main topics are Middle East mess. Well, what is that about? Well, the Middle East is a big place. Well, there's a lot going on in the Middle East. And so while we've been talking a lot about Syria lately, ultimately, we're going to catch up on some of the other spots. But let's be honest, Syria kind of factors into almost everything we're talking about. Mexico is. I'm in bed right now with the drone.
Does she look like the Borg Queen from the first Star Trek movie with her in it? Because if so,
if I had to guess, I bet the alien drone queen speaks Spanish. All right. I mean, I'm just saying, Mexican Iron Man is good at taking down those pesky people using the Spanish lingo, Spanglish. All right, let's jump right into our odds and ends for today. So, Joe, I can't. It was. I can't remember if it was like the first year or the second year we were doing the show. We got into a big discussion about Antarctica and how China has declared themselves as a Arctic nation, and which is rather amusing. I'm sure they have some -10 line now, or -11 line that takes the South China Sea up into the Arctic Circle. Because of some letter about somebody in Chinese Navy from the 9th century or something.
First, Antarctica or the Antarctica and the Arctic are 2 different things, right?
Arctic is the north, Antarctica is the south. Yes.
Yeah. But there's another author who is somewhat prophetic, we always talk about Tom Clancy and we profit, but the other one is Clive Cussler, and
Oh yeah.
he wrote a book where the Chinese landed off of the coast of Washington and hundreds of years ago, and they laid claim to it. Well, we've now seen that actually happen. And then in another one of his books, they laid claim to all of Antarctica because one of their ships once went off course and landed there. So it wouldn't surprise me to see a Chinese claim of some type like that. I personally think that the Chinese decision to be an Arctic power is in partnership with Russia to assist them in some of the different expansion they're all going to do together. So that's probably the real thing there.
Yeah. Clive Cussler, I haven't thought about him in a long time. Raise the Titanic. I mean, completely,
Yeah.
now that we've seen what happened to the Titanic in reality, that's a completely trash idea, but still, he had some pretty Dirk Pitt novels were pretty damn good back in the day.
So the Dirk Pitt novels are good, and that's where I first found out about this other novel thing. He's got another series called the Oregon Files, and it's a ship called the Oregon run by private contractors who work for the U.S. government and do missions all over. And let's just say it has relevance to my life in some ways. So he kind of predicted the seagoing PMCs of today, about a decade ago. And that's where all this China stuff came from. So pretty interesting. If you don't know who Clive Cussler is, check him out. If you're into like military style fiction, check out the Oregon Files series. Solid stuff.
Yeah. The Dirk, like a lot of the Jack Ryan books, the Dirk Pitt books are maybe a little dated now, but ultimately they were always like 5 years in the future. They were, so he had some really kind of not like near future elements in them, but nothing quite science fiction-y.
What's interesting is the one that made into a movie, Sahara, which was outstanding and perfectly cast with Steve Zahn and Matthew McConaughey as Dirk Pitt and Al Giardino. But that one predicted the fighting between the Tuaregs and the Malian government pretty darn well. And it was before that became a big deal. So pretty solid writing.
It just so happens that I've just found the Clive Cussler audiobook collection on the high seas. Have to maybe check that out. All right, let's get back into this one. All right, so the Rand Corporation, one of the more influential U.S. think tanks that help U.S. craft foreign policy, is out with a new paper arguing that it's time for the U.S. to use a divide and rule strategy with Beijing and Moscow in the Arctic. Years of sanction threats and general belligerence from Washington helped organize the wedding of China and Russia's complementary economics. And that's increasingly evident in the Arctic, where the two are cooperating on development, trade routes, and oil and gas projects. And so this is how Rand sounds the alarm on this. They say what might be done to limit China-Russia cooperation in this geopolitical important region. Rand researchers consider the question in a new paper, concluding that Western policies focusing on the differences between Beijing and Moscow may be effective. Gosh, Joe, it's almost like somebody finally realized that China and Russia are not generally in league with each other. They're literally in a marriage of convenience, There may be no need to drive a wedge between Russia and China in the region. That's because the one may already exist. The two countries have very different Arctic interests. Now, this is true. The Rand Corporation is full of smart people. Ultimately, I think they're a little late to the game with this one, but ultimately, I think that's right. China and Russia don't have the same objectives, especially in the way they would want to use the Arctic. I mean, what's your kind of take on that generally? And, I can go a little further into this.
I think that there's a lot of exploration that hasn't been done up there as far as minerals and what might be underneath the permafrost and underneath the ice. So there's a lot of potential raw materials that could be found there. And I think that China's just always looking to make themselves relevant, and this is one way of doing it.
Well, you mentioned kind of resources and things like that. So there's a couple things, right? There's the route. They're looking with the whole global warming. They're hoping to get basically a summer sea route, like the Northern Passage, essentially. But beyond that, there's military activity. So Russia's, cautious about, foreign, especially non-Arctic military presence in the Arctic region. So, there's the Arctic countries like Canada, US, Russia, the kind of Scandinavian countries tend to be considered Arctic countries. Denmark, because of Greenland, is considered an Arctic country. But what China, right? I mean, where do you think China gets off actually kind of laying any claim to some sort of, right to Arctic, resources? I mean, they're overfishing everywhere else in the world. Why wouldn't they overfish in the Arctic?
Not a lot of fish there.
I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of fish there.
There is a lot of fish.
Yeah, energy projects is another big one, and Far Eastern development. So, Power of Siberia 2 pipeline, while a contentious issue with no funding.
Josh Clark has a pretty good point too, that China's been coming after the Canadians pretty hard, and Canada probably owns more Arctic territory than anybody else. So.
Oh yeah, it's probably a toss-up between Canada and Russia.
Well, by landmass, Canada's actually a little bit bigger.
They've got more landmass like up in there, but I'm just thinking that long coastline that Russia has.
What's ironic is that Denmark has more of a claim to being an Arctic power than China, and they're not making that claim. I know.
They're not making that claim, right? Because they own Greenland until Trump finally buys it off of them, turns it into the 52nd state. Does that make us even more of an Arctic?
$7,500. What do you take? Anyway,
well, does that make us even more of an Arctic country when Canada becomes the 51st state?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you see the tweet that Trump put out, by the way, where he said he was talking about Governor Trudeau, and the state of Canada?
And end up starting a war with Canada, which is okay because the Salvation Army can beat Canada.
Well, as much as his people hate him right now, you'd probably have more Canadians welcoming the U.S. than pushing us away.
I know that immediately to my north you would. So
yeah, tell me about it. So let's see. So Russia's increasing LNG exports to China and infrastructure developments. They also have that pipeline that's up there. New railways and bridges in the Far East could also demonstrate benefits to increase trade volumes. So that would be one of the big things. Rand Corporation's analysis suggests the potential frictions could lead to a cooling of relations. But the authors counter that by pointing out ongoing cooperation and mutual benefits, particularly in the face of Western sanctions. The suggestion is these tensions might not lead to significant split due to overarching strategic interests, right? So like our sanctions and our pressure on them may override any kind of natural friction that they may have between the two of them. The author concludes that the U.S. continuing its concurrent policy might actually solidify rather than disrupt Sino-Russian partnership, given the mutual economic and strategic advantages that they derive. And I think that's kind of the bottom line of this, right? Joe, we've done everything we can to push them into each other's arms, and that will continue to apply in all theaters, to include the Arctic, if we continue this. Though Trump probably has as good an opportunity as any to drive a wedge between the two. It'll be interesting to see if he can kind of play that game, but we'll see.
We used to try and encourage that wedge between them, and now we're doing everything we can to drive them together. So,
yeah. All right, let's move on to our next one here. So this is a tweet. So it's a little brief, but there's a lot to talk about here. And there's a video from this Fox News story. So let me read the tweet and then we'll play the news story. This is from Nick Satora. He said, just in, the police in Aurora, Colorado have detained 14 people at the apartment complex taken over by Tren de Aragua after sting of violent home invasions. They even found victims tied up and stabbed. Trump was right.
Okay, Aurora, Colorado now. This is a live look now. The sun is up there in that state, and police have now detained 14 people and reported armed home invasion. That's the same apartment complex where a lot of people were complaining about the armed Venezuelan gang members roaming the halls. Reports indicate that investigators said that several suspects entered the apartment and had 2 people inside. The suspects then reportedly moved the victims to another apartment complex, or rather another unit on the property where police said they were found threatened and bound. An adult man sustained a non-life-threatening stab wound. At the moment, police say it's unclear if the suspects are connected to the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, but we'll get a live report in Colorado 30 minutes away and bring you the latest on that developing story.
So, so these are the same. This is the same apartment complex that they invaded, weeks and months ago.
If
or is this a
only
different
the
one?
residents in Aurora, Colorado, had the right to bear arms, this could have been stopped. Oh wait,
Wait
they
a
do.
second. Well, I don't know. Colorado's pretty damn restrictive. You can't have high capacity magazines there, right?
You know what
Yeah,
I've heard? Colorado's inside the United States.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
well,
would, however, love to see the court case that arises when some terrible white supremacist apartment dweller shoots a bunch of undocumented immigrants for being undocumented immigrants, which is how you
That's
know
a court
they
case
frame
I'm
it.
willing to fight.
Same.
I'm willing to roll that. Sometimes we have
Same.
to. And this reminds me of a conversation. A good guy on Twitter, a friend, a guy I've actually met in real life, said, "Hey, what's the best policy for taking my short-barreled rifle with silencer across state lines? How do you notify the ATF and all that?" And I said, "You just go ahead and do it. Just don't tell anyone you're doing it, and don't consent to searches because you have a right to own what you have."
Yeah.
We need to stop thinking that we do all of these things with their permission. It's the other way around. So.
Joe, one of the things that they used to say, I don't know if anybody says it anymore, but it's better to be convicted by 12 than carried by 6.
Well, judged by 12, but yes.
I'll judge by
I might
12,
not be
yeah.
convicted.
All right. Yeah, I mean, but the sad thing is, Joe, is this is still a problem. I mean, clearly the federal government doesn't care. I mean, it's an interstate criminal organization, right? You'd think that of all the, we complained about the need for any kind of federal law enforcement, but shock of all shocks, this actually might be the use case for something like federal law enforcement, yet no federal law enforcement anywhere to be seen.
Right. This is the perfect case for federal intervention in state law, right? But there is none.
Well, the other part of it too is that ultimately the states are going to have to go after these guys, and some of these states are inclined to, and some of them, let's be honest, Colorado is not known for its tough prosecutors. Maybe that whole sanctuary stuff, is starting to bite some of these people in the ass. Wait a second, is Colorado a sanctuary state, or do they just do sanctuary cities in Colorado?
There's a couple sanctuary cities.
Yeah. So I don't know if Aurora falls into that, but
I believe that it does.
All right. We have not seen the last of Tren de Aragua, but Joe, I would imagine under a Trump administration, they're going to get the attention they so richly deserve. Anything else, Watcher?
It's a horrific gang and needs to be utterly expunged from the surface of the planet. But
Well, tell us how you really feel. All right. Russia detains suspect over murder of chemical weapons chief Igor Kirillov. Russia said on Wednesday to detain the Uzbek man who had confessed to planting and detonating a bomb which killed a top general in Moscow on the instructions of Ukraine's SBU security service. You know, Joe, it seems like I remember another attack conducted by like 3 Uzbek men who, you know, I don't know nothing.
Well, I think that if I was a nation state and I sponsored what was essentially a terrorist attack, I don't think I would advertise it like Ukraine did immediately.
Yeah.
But hey, whatever.
Because the SBU actually released the video showing the target, showing the hit. I mean, in the old days, you wouldn't have taken a damn video of it. It's, you know,
Right.
You're so far away from when the bomb blows up that, you know.
Plausible deniability is a thing.
Kirillov, who was the chief of Russia's nuclear, biological, and chemical protection troops, was killed outside his apartment building on Tuesday, along with his assistant, when a bomb hidden in an electric scooter went off. He is the most senior Russian military officer to be assassinated in Russia by Ukraine. Ukraine's SBU intelligence service took responsibility for the killing after Ukraine accused Kirillov of being responsible for the use of chemical weapons against Ukrainian troops, something Moscow denies. You know, Joe, Ukraine's been very aggressive with some of these assassination attempts. I mean, a lot of these don't even make the news. A lot of the people who are killed are not the correct people. For instance, I remind you of when they tried to kill, what's his name? The philosopher, you know, Dugan. They killed his daughter instead. Now, you know, they say, oh, well, she's a member of the media, so she's complicit.
Or when they targeted a media figure. Those are not actual military targets and actually have protected status under Geneva. But I would think that if there was actually a chemical attack on Ukrainian troops, the entire world would have been screaming about it. And they have not been. So that might tell you the veracity of this. But let me just say that if they had killed him with a sniper or something like that, that's different. But using a VBIED is beyond the pale, even for nation states.
Yeah.
So it's a very non-specific weapon. Could have harmed a whole bunch of other civilians just standing around. But I get it. They're orcs, so who cares, right? This is what happens when you dehumanize your opposition. You end up dehumanizing yourself.
In a video published by the Baza news outlet, which is known to have sources in Russian law enforcement circles, the suspect is seen sitting in a van describing his actions. It's not clear under what conditions he was speaking, and Reuters could not immediately verify the video's authenticity. Dressed in a winter coat, the suspect is shown saying that he had come to Moscow on the order of Ukraine's intelligence services, bought an electric scooter, and received an improvised explosive device, making it exactly that, a VBIED. He describes placing the device on the scooter and parking it outside the apartment complex where he lived. Investigators cited him as saying that the surveillance camera in the hire car, which they said was watched in the Ukraine city of Dnipro by people who organized the killing.
I'm sorry. It's a scooter-borne IED. It's not a vehicle. God damn, I hate the world we live in. God damn it.
I thought scooters were vehicles.
No.
I would just like to assume that
gay boy things.
That scooters don't even exist. If I just say vehicle, I can pretend to say maybe a moped. Something like that. The suspect, who was thought to have been born in 1995, is shown saying he remotely detonated a device when Kirilov left the building, he says Ukraine had offered him $100,000 in residency in a European country. It looks like that's not going to happen now. Investigators say they were identifying other people involved. Reported that another suspect had been detained. Reuters could not independently confirm that report. Interestingly enough, Moscow is going to raise the incident at the UN Security Council. So everyone involved in the killing will be found and punished. And Moscow would not be intimidated. We see that the Kiev regime has taken responsibility once again for a new terrorist attack. All the SBU losers and the mad Kiev regime are all tools managed by the Anglo-Saxons. Interesting. Using a term that Russia uses to describe the United States and Britain. They are the main beneficiaries of Kiev's terrorism. As much as I like to kind of castigate the collusion of U.S. Directly with Ukraine, I can't imagine that even the most deranged of some of our CIA people would advise Ukraine to do this. If only for they told me to do it. That the SBU does it and they're successful. And then when somebody finally gets their hands on them in the future, they say, "Oh, well, the CIA told me to do it." That's probably actually the best reason why they wouldn't. It's not that they have any kind of moral compunctions of doing something like this. It's the fact that they don't want to get in trouble.
That's true. There's a comment in the chat about can't write off scooters as non-threats anymore. Listen, if you've ever been to the Middle East, you would not write off a scooter as a non-threat.
You can't even write off wandering donkeys as a non-threat.
Yeah.
Ask me how I know.
Yeah.
Right? There's been known to be at least one donkey-born IED.
Yeah, we always called it the DBIED.
The worst thing about those is if the bomb doesn't get you, you still get covered with nastiness.
I was just gonna say it's still a donkey.
Well, I will say in my case, it was still well enough outside of effective range that evidently it was a premature detonation on the DBIED caused the loss of the vehicle.
Oh no,
I have that problem.
Premature explosion happens from time to time. Anything else on this one, guys? I mean, it's this is a pretty big story, and I get the feeling that if Ukraine thinks they could get away with this, they'll just keep doing it. Joe, the one thing that surprised me is that all of the main generals. I can't think of any general officers in the United States Army that live in off-base housing. Now, there may be, I just don't know about it, but almost all of them have specific quarters on post, so you're inside the wire. Now, clearly that's not an impregnable thing, but it is a level of security that denies the casual, person entering base access. I can't believe Russia doesn't have something,
I honestly was going to say the same thing, that I cannot believe Russia doesn't require it, given their type of society and the dangers and inherent risks there. But also in Russian society, an apartment in Moscow is a status symbol and always has been, right? I might live on a base way out in Vladivostok, but if I'm really a connected guy, I have an apartment in Moscow as well. So that could kind of be the case here.
Not just any apartment in Stalinka, right? If you're really going for your status. Anyhow, it's somebody brought this up in chat, and it's a wonderful time just to remind you that this did in fact happen. You are you're not remembering it wrong.
Yeah, this is not AI. I wish it were, but it is not.
That's Afghanistan, though, right?
Yeah, that's Afghanistan. By the way,
it was Afghanistan. Yeah.
Any people who have been spending any amount of time in our kind of neck of the woods, algorithmic neck of the woods, and within Goon Twitter, you've been seeing Malcolm Nance's name pop up again. Let me just say that if I never hear from this guy ever again, it would be too soon. Yet, if you're interested in him getting rolled and absolutely clowned on by guys who actually that he couldn't carry the jock strap for, I recommend going over to X and checking it out. I will
he's made
not
some
be
silly
checking out.
challenges and glove throwdowns to the wrong people.
Well,
And,
evidently, when he says Scout Sniper School, well, I'm at the Ukrainian one.
Yeah, whatever,
Oh,
dude.
well, that's not what you said.
Yeah.
And when you say Scout Sniper, you imply you mean the actual real Scout Sniper, either Army Sniper School or Marine Scout Sniper School.
Really, when
Look,
you use the
guys.
term scout sniper, you're generally only talking about the Marine Corps.
That's the Marine Corps. That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Given
Look,
that he
guys,
was in the
he's just
Navy.
upset. Look, he's just real upset. He's never going to get over the fact that he thought Kamala was going to make him sec def.
Do you know how many people with cryptologic clearance we allow into Scout Sniper School?
None.
Exactly zero.
You can count them on your asshole.
Exactly.
All right.
In all of his talks about having gone outside the wire in Iraq, we don't let people with cryptological clearance outside the wire anywhere. So,
Well, in fairness, getting from point A to point B, he probably was, like in the backseat of a Humvee type thing. But it was not like going outside. It's not like he went on patrols. I mean, hell, I was in an infantry battalion, and I did go on patrols, but I was thinking I was more of I was a support platoon leader for the second half of my, and most of what I did was outside the wire, was with log packs and things like that. But we did do fleas and other kind of stuff. So I forget about that. Chair Force. Yeah, well, I'll be honest with you. If he was a scout sniper, I was a space shuttle door gunner. So how about that? How about them apples? Mark Kelly, I bet he was a space shuttle door gunner too. What do you bet? All right, guys, real quick before we go to our shameless profit taking segment of the show, a good friend of the show passed away. Was it yesterday morning? Is when we all found out about it. Well, yesterday morning for me, it was yesterday evening, I guess, for you guys. Legal Vices, Jeff, the maritime lawyer from South Korea, passed away from a heart attack the other day. And let me just be honest, this is like one of the nicest guys that I've met on YouTube. And, he did something that most people can't do, and that's he was friends with almost everybody that he interacted with. And so, what can we do, right? It's one of those kind of things. Like when somebody passes, it's kind of like after the fact, right? But there is actually a really kind of cool memorial effort that is going around, and that is getting his channel to 100,000 subscribers. I'm going to pull. Actually, if you can get it before I can, I'm just going to look. I'm going to look on my window, but if you could share the. Legal Vices was actually trending on
Twitter.
On Twitter yesterday, RIP Jeff. And he's at 96.3 thousand subscribers. I'm already subscribed. Looks like Watcher is subscribed as well. If you would, Laura Cox has dropped the link in the chat. Go over to his page and give him a sub. I think if it, like we ask you guys to do things like, give the video a like or subscribe to the channel, all that kind of stuff. Well, this one I think is something that I think if you're not already subscribed to him, I think it's really worth it. And I think you should, kind of consider doing it. his video content was excellent. His legal
He's been on our
analysis was
show
very
once.
sound.
I think you and I were on his show.
Yeah, we were on with him, and he's been on here. And then I hung out with him with Andrew, Legal Mindset, one time up in Seoul. So that was a awesome time. Yeah, we want to get the silver play button for his son. Essentially, that'd be the kind of the best memorial that I can think of for all the that we can do here in the YouTube universe. So that's about all I had to say about that. I mean, just kind of a bummer. The sad thing is I wish I knew him better. I had another opportunity to hang out with him recently, but I wasn't able to hang out with him, and because Legal Mindset's back here in Korea again. And so I got to jealously look at pictures of Andrew, Jeff, and Meme Copium all hanging out in Busan, having cigars, steaks, and whiskey. Three things. Well, I'm not a big cigar guy, but the whiskey and steak, we did quite a bit of talking about that stuff the other day. So
we'll forgive you for the cigar thing.
Yeah, just
a
never.
True gentleman appreciates a cigar and a whiskey.
I appreciate it. I just don't really like them. But that being said, I'll smoke one from time to time. Just kind of. Anyway, Legal Vices, R.I.P. Jeff. I will admit that I said more than one prayer for the guy here in the last day or so. So it's pray for his family, pray for his friends. A lot of people taking it pretty hard on X. My entire timeline yesterday, Joe, was just a constant stream of people, posting about him. So that it's very cool how you see how algorithmically connected you are to and it's good when you see something good like that happen. So, all right. Anything else? Let's talk a little bit about tackle-wisdom.com, Joe. That's a little more upbeat, I think.
Is it? All right. Well, it's too late now to get anything by Christmas, but you can go ahead and still order books and T-shirts. We now offer our T-shirts in another color, sand. So I'll get some photos of that one up there. It looks pretty cool on the desert style shirt. So it actually came from an active duty soldier who was asking us for a Tactical Wisdom T-shirt he could wear under his uniform. This is our first attempt. It doesn't really meet the uniform requirements, so he's just going to buy some T-shirts and send them to us to put the logo on for him. But buy shirts, buy patches, buy books. A lot of work being done on Tactical Wisdom 6. I'm rushing to get it out. It's way overdue. And once again, I just kind of let the world slow me down, right? All the crazy stuff going on. And then they had a move in the middle, and we had a pretty heavy training schedule all year. But hey, check it out. Also check out our training schedule. I've got the first half of the year up and posted, but I'm scheduling some more fun events in the second half of the year, like an alumni weekend. If you've ever been to a brush beater or tactical wisdom or combat studies group class or any CFC event, you can come to an alumni weekend out here where we're just going to camp. We're just going to hang out. No programmed activities, just camping and hanging out here at Camp Ponderosa as a like-minded group, spending time together. I'm going to do a couple of those. We will have Shield Field Days here again, trying to hammer down a date on that by the end of this week. But it'll be one of the last 2 weeks of July. And there's all kinds of fun and cool and different things. And next year, we're going to have some winter classes here. So cool stuff. I'm glad Hunch decided to come in and fall down from the top rope with tactical spooning and bayoneting. One does not preclude the other, for the record. But anyway, there was a lot of bayonet love going around on Twitter yesterday, and I'm going to take full credit for that. It's kind of good stuff. But check out the training calendar. Come to some classes. I know that a lot of folks have just dropped by the classes to say hi, and that's cool too. I want to thank Wanda on here for buying 2 sets of books to give out as Christmas presents. So cool stuff.
Joe, I wanted to ask you a quick question before we jump into our main topic. Have you heard about this Mark 47 AK? It's a American-made AK. I think CMMG makes it. Hold on a second. I'm pulling it up here.
Have not.
I saw a review of it, and it looks pretty badass. Let me share my screen here.
Is it an AK-47 or an AK-74?
So it looks like basically a 7.62 by 39 AR-15 is what I thought, but evidently there's more to it than that.
I think the guy to ask about that is probably Hunch, but I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I think Hunch actually has a 7.62.
I don't think he has a 7.62 AK. I mean AR, but
I thought he did. Oh, yeah, several. Oh, multiple. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, I was just wondering, is this something that you would be interested in, Joe?
No, or I like my ARs to be ARs and my AKs to be AKs.
You don't like the.
I'm not big into the Franken gun thing, right? I want things to be what they are. If it works in its platform, leave it in its platform. Just like I don't like a 7.62 by 39 AR, no matter how much you tell everyone that you think I did. I don't. I like them to be what they were. So,
I guess fair enough. I mean, like I'm of the opinion if it works, it works. It's just one of those kind of.
Yeah, but my thing then is like everyone gets into these niche guns. I've got this because it's cool and that. I like my guns to be functional. I don't go into them for the neat factor. I go into them for the, hey, when I pull this, it goes boom. And for me, the difference between the AR and the AK is what it's used for, right? Urban, short range, or short to mid range combat, AR every day. Rural, medium range to short range combat, AK every day. Long range, I'm going to use a bolt gun of some type. I'm not going to try to make an AR shoot 1,000 meters. I'm not going to try to make an AK shoot 800 meters, right? Use the right platform for the right thing.
All right. I just thought I would ask you about that to see if you'd heard about it. Yeah, Hunch said this one has an AR-10 bolt compared to his having an AR-15 bolt. Yeah, to me they just look kind of fugly. Honestly, that's that's not necessarily a very tactically sound kind of reason to like or not like something. But for whatever reason, the one that I saw that was set up on X the other day, it just looked kind of cool. So I wanted to see if rebranded the Mutant. Little bit of AR 7.62 by 39 AR hate here. I'm okay with it. I'm just kind of curious. Anyway, all right. Moving onwards, let's jump right into our first main segment today, guys. The Middle East is a mess. I mean, it is a mess. This is one of those cats and dogs living together. Mass hysteria. What the world is coming to when Palestinian security forces launch a rare crackdown on militants in the West Bank. I mean, Joe. I get the feeling that they're like, please, Israel, don't come into the West Bank. We'll take care of them.
Well, that would be nice if it was real.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times that the Palestinian Authority does these things to make it seem like they are, to try and win concessions.
Well, I think it goes as much to faction fighting as anything else. I mean, you get the hothead. The Palestinian Authority, when compared to Hamas, is a little more tempered. But that being said, not a lot more tempered because they're still Palestinians. And Hamas made big inroads in the West Bank after their victory down in Gaza. But ultimately, the Palestinian Authority has to kind of crack skulls on people if they challenge their rule. So it's not out of altruism that they're doing. It's more out of, pure political, kind of practicality. This raid marks an unusual step for the Palestinian Authority, the governing body of the semi-autonomous pockets in the occupied West Bank that is internationally recognized but largely lost control of militant strongholds such as Jenin, where forces operated through the weekend into Monday. Israeli troops have stepped into the vacuum in recent years, particularly since the October 7th Hamas attack. Palestinian health officials said that 811 Palestinians have been killed since then in the West Bank, most by Israeli raids into the Palestinian cities and towns. Israel says most of the dead have been militants. That's interesting. I mean, in these kind of infighting events, especially in the West Bank, you tend to see a lot of civilians get caught in the crossfire. But if they're actually being a little more circumspect with how they do their infighting, that may discriminate. That may make this a little different than previous kind of internal clashes. No,
I don't know. I think that we have to remember that it's significant that Hamas overthrew the PA, so they're always going to be fighting against each other, right? That's gotta play into this somehow too. I think you're right. The factional fighting is interesting, but I'd also point out that the PA has AR platform rifles, as that photo shows. Wonder where they got those.
Yeah. Well, this is one of those older ones. That looks like an aluminum buttstock on it. Those aluminum buttstocks are like 80s, 70s, 80s era, aren't they?
Probably. That's probably when they got them. As part of the deal to set them up, right?
Yeah. Let's see. On Saturday, Palestinian forces said that they had begun an operation in the Jenin refugee camp, a long-time militant stronghold. The operation was continuing Monday, and AP reporters hearing heavy gunfire and spotted at least 2 Palestinian armored vehicles roaming the outskirts of the camp. The UN Humanitarian Office said the security forces took over part of the hospital in Jenin, using it as a base, shooting from inside. Well, I mean, they sure share that tendency with their Hamas brothers. Hey, guys, there's a hospital. Let's set up inside of it and use it as a fighting position. Maybe they won't shoot back.
Huh. Shocking. Almost like that's a whole Palestinian thing.
I know, right? The militant groups, Islamic Jihad and Hamas, operate freely across Jenin. So there we go. They've identified the 2 groups, Islamic Jihad and Hamas, and its streets are regularly lined with posters depicting slain fighters as martyrs to the Palestinian struggle. Young men carrying walkie-talkies patrol the streets. Israel said the militant groups are part of the Israeli Axis of Resistance. Both groups receive funding and other support from Iran, but they are deeply rooted in Palestinian society. The security forces are operating according to a clear political vision from the Palestinian leadership and on importance of imposing order, establishing the rule of law, and restoring civil peace and societal security. And it doesn't come right out and say this, but I'll be honest with you, Joe. I think that the Palestinian Authority knows that based on the way things have been going in Gaza and southern Lebanon, if the Palestinian Authority doesn't get its shit together, they'll just, the Israelis will just roll into the West Bank and do what they did, in Gaza and in southern Lebanon.
I'm pretty sure that's the real motivation behind this whole thing, right? Hey, we don't need a special military operation here. We got this. So
yeah. Don't worry about us. We won't let these assholes get out of line. The security forces are operating according to a clear clear political vision. Establishing the rule of law. The troops are focusing on eradicating Iran-backed groups that were trying to incite chaos and anarchy. Palestinian security forces reported the death of 2 men in the crackdown, a 19-year-old civilian shot riding a motorcycle, and an Islamic Jihad militant. Security forces were initially denied killing the man on the motorcycle before admitting in a statement Friday have not said why the they targeted the young man. His 15-year-old cousin, who was also on the motorcycle, was shot in the head and wounded. UN officials citing local video footage said the pair were unarmed, delivering food from a family restaurant when they were shot. I mean, surprise, surprise, the Palestinians shot civilians. It was not immediately clear. Say it ain't so, Joe. The Palestinian authorities decided to launch the crackdown. So anyway, I mean, so basically what we have is Palestinian on Palestinian violence. I'm here for it. Let's just sit back and let them keep going. Make sure the Palestinian Authority, as long as they're fighting Hamas and Islamic Jihad, make sure they have plenty of ammo. If I bet Israel would even pay for free oil changes on their MRAPs if they need it too. I get the feeling that people are finally starting to sit up and take notice that when Israel gets in a bad mood, bad things happen to bad people. So
there's civil conflict in the West Bank. I heard this one guy, I can't remember his name, say that World War III would be a collection of civil wars and regional wars. So interesting.
All right, let's move on to the next one. So we're back over to Syria again. Joe, this kind of goes along the lines of some of the stuff that we've been talking about. How the West rebranded Al Qaeda's Jolani, because that's exactly what they've done. And Jolani's going a long way to help with that, right? Now, let's be honest. Is it possible that we've got him wrong? He's not a psychopath and that he's tired of all the fighting. Well, you could make that narrative, but I think you'd be wrong, because I think any true believer in Muhammad realizes that ultimately he has to continue the fight and strengthen the Ummah and maybe knee for the next 5 years, 10 years, and building strength is how you build strength for the Ummah.
Well, I mean, look, man. Also, you don't even have to go that far. Like, if you look at what his organization is, it's literally just ISIS saying, "All right, well, instead of trying to do an international terrorist organization, we're just going to be a local terrorist organization. We use the same policies, we use the same strategies, we use the same tactics. It'll be the same fighters. We'll just keep it inside Syria's borders for now."
Well, no. So interestingly enough, that's the difference between ISIS and Al Qaeda. ISIS used the franchise model to expand out and focus their operations on the country where they were located, whereas Al Qaeda was explicitly focused on attacking external countries from, and keeping it small, tight, more trained. That Al Qaeda was kind of seen as more of an elite organization. Whereas ISIS, let's be honest, they were just a bunch of fucking pirates. But yeah, and Al-Nusra was just a rebranding of Al Qaeda, and then HTS is just a rebranding of Al-Nusra. So essentially, they are Al Qaeda. But that being said, he also spent time working for ISIS, so he's got the best of both worlds.
He's got a great resume.
That's exactly right. He's a real go-getter. He never leave no stone unturned.
All the warlords, he warlords the most.
Let's see. Corporate media is heralding the fall of Bashar Assad and the emergence of Abu Maham al-Jawlani as the new leader of Syria, despite his deep ties to both Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Huh? How Syria's diversity-friendly jihadists planned on building a state runs the headline from the Britain's Daily Telegraph that suggests that Jawlani will construct a new Syria respecting minority rights. What, Joe? Somebody once told me
the odds of that happening are zero.
The best predictor of future performance is past performance. And what was the past performance of both Al Qaeda and ISIS in dealing with minorities? Ask the Yazidis.
If you ain't us, you dead.
Exactly. And even if you are,
the best track record for diversity and inclusiveness.
Yeah, DEI is definitely not high on their their milestones. Let's see. Labeling him a moderate jihad. The Washington Post described him as a pragmatic and charismatic leader, while CNN portrayed him as a blazer-wearing revolutionary. Meanwhile, an in-depth portrayal of Rolling Stone describes him as a ruthlessly pragmatic, astute politician who has renounced global jihad. I think that's true. He has renounced global jihad, but that doesn't mean he has really renounced global jihad. He just said that for Rolling Stone could write that, and dummies in Washington could believe him. I get the feeling that some of the killers that are surrounding Donald Trump are not going to fall for this, but you never know.
I mean, Takia is a thing, right?
Yeah.
It's allowed to lie to foreigners to advance Islam. So in order to get those Western dollars, he had to say the words. That doesn't mean he meant them. So,
Excuse me.
Reconstruction dollars are the best dollars because they flow so freely.
CNN even scored an exclusive sit-down interview with Giuliani, even as his movement was storming Damascus. When asked by host Jumana Karadesh about his past actions, he responded by saying, I believe that everyone in life goes through phases and experience. As you grow, you learn, and you continue to learn until the very last day of your life. As if he were discussing the embarrassing teenage mistakes, not establishing and leading al-Nusra Front, Al-Qaeda's franchise in Syria. Teenage mistakes. I mean, we were all young once, right? Who wasn't? This is a far cry from the first time CNN covered Giuliani. In 2013, the network labeled him one of the 10 most dangerous terrorists, known for abducting, torturing, and slaughtering racial and religious minorities. Well, I wonder if maybe that's what he'll probably end up trying to do this time around as well. Still, on the U.S. terrorist list today, the FBI is offering a $10 million reward for information about his whereabouts. Well, I can tell you where he is. He's in Damascus. Go get him, FBI. Let's see how that works out. Washington and other Western governments consider Giuliani's new organization, HTS, as the same one, is one and the same as Al Qaeda and Al Nusra. Joe, I don't think that's true. I honestly don't think that's true. I don't think that
it's not.
The POTUS thinks of these as the same thing. Still, let's see. This poses a serious public relations dilemma for Western nations and supposed HTS-led overthrow of Bashar al-Assad, and thus Politico and other reports there is a huge scramble in the West to remove HTS and Giuliani from terrorist list as quickly as possible. I'll be honest with you. I just think you drop a JDAM on them, blame Russia, and call it a day.
No, I say you drop a JDAM on them and take credit for it, because that's what really we need to be doing. These guys are not good guys, no matter how you cut it. Sure, they took out Bashar al-Assad, who was also a bad guy. But you have a bad guy who was replaced by worse guys. We shouldn't pretend like it's otherwise. Everyone thinks that everything in this world is A or B, right? The entire world. Let's take a quote from a Tom Clancy movie. The world is gray, Jack. There can be bad sides all the way around.
So this is what he told a crowd on December 8th. Tell me, Joe, if this sounds like conciliatory and diverse language. Syria is being purified. This victory is born for the people who have languished in prison and the fighters who broke their chains. Sounds to me like he means to take this seriously. He did a stint in the notorious Abu Ghraib prison.
Again, alone, great resume. Fantastic resume.
Let's see. The name al-Jawlani translate from the Golan Heights, as you mentioned last week, Joe. And yet the leader appears distinctly unconcerned with the Israeli invasion of his homeland.
The IDF about him is a lie and false, because the new leader of Syria is not,
from
Syria.
From the Golan Heights. He's not from the Golan Heights.
He's Saudi. So...
the IDF has taken much of southern Syria. Yeah, we've covered this. By the way, Bibi actually visited southern Syria, and they said that their troops are not going anywhere. He has basically said the Golan Heights will forever be an inseparable part of the state of Israel. Well, there's that. And Jelani says he has no intention of confronting Israel because he knows they would fucking wipe the floor with him. Syria is not ready for a war and does not intend to go to another war. The source of the concern was Iranian militias and Hezbollah, and the danger has passed. He said, a strange thing to say while Israel is carrying out the largest Air Force operation in history. That's because he knows what side his bread's buttered on, and that side is Turkey, and Turkey will replace everything that the Israelis are currently blowing up. At least that's what he hopes.
That's what he hopes.
I don't know if that's true, because once Israel's gotten rid of all that ordnance, then what's going to stop Turkey from just telling him the way it is?
Well, yeah, I mean, Turkey's probably going to be like, well, makes it way easier to take that over when it's time if they don't have anything. So,
you know,
Turkey
the interesting
will send
thing,
them some sort of a security guarantee, and that'll be it. They'll be a Turkish puppet.
you know what will be interesting. A lot of these when they're up in the hills being hunted and harried or whatever. A lot of these jihadists are very strident and kind of all for the cause, right? But now that he's won and nobody's trying to kill him, how quickly does he take Syria's money? I mean, how quickly does he take Turkey's money or Israel's money or whatever other group that wants to get close to him's money and start, just kind of playing somebody's got to replace al-Assad. Might as well be me, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Syria, 5 years from now, with the direction of Chechnya, kind of like a authoritarian puppet of some other power, because they are profoundly weak right now, and he said it correctly in this interview that his real threats are Iranian-backed militias and Hezbollah. Those are the biggest risk to his actual rule, because they've got an actual interest in that portion of Syria versus, Israel is pretty
control more of Syria than he does.
Exactly right. And they actually have active forces who, let's be honest, Iran didn't go anywhere. They're still there, and they've got a lot of people on the DL living in.
And they're not even actually like Iranian agents. There's literal Iranian military on the ground there.
Right. So it'll be interesting to see how he, and like I said, he would not be the first Islamic militant to basically take the money, which is exactly what the Russians did with the, Kadyrov and his father, who was the leader of Chechnya before him, basically took the money and became, Russia's puppets. But they cloak themselves in all that very, very nice Muslim rhetoric. And
let me make an administrative comment. Those of you who are chatting in both live chats plus the CFC fan chat on Twitter, kudos to you, man. I can barely keep up with one, let alone all three.
Right.
I know, right? I have not. I've got the. Let's see. Yeah, Laura Cox is all over the place, man. Laura, you are a force of nature.
Laura and Josh, man. Oh,
I know. Let's see.
Josh, don't forget, I'm bringing some more of that good Southern whatever distillery whiskey in February, so you might want to be there for that. We'll even get Laura to drink some.
Watcher, just an admin note. The Times of Israel story. We're going to. That's the second to last story in this section. We're going to delete that. All right. Moving on with story number 3. We got more of Middle Eastern mess. If I can get it to actually open the page. U.S. conducts new airstrikes in Syria and Yemen. I don't know if you had heard about this, Joe. And guess what? With no congressional authorization.
Well, they can do whatever they want, right?
Well,
That's the new way. We've set aside the Constitution and do things however we choose. Uh, and they might say, well, the War Powers Act gives them this authority. We are well beyond the 90 days.
yeah,
Well beyond.
that's a discrete short term, kind of conflict. This is not that. This is something much kind of bigger. I'm still having trouble opening this.
You can't even use local self-defense for Yemen, right? I mean, there's not much local to Yemen.
Yeah. Congress has not authorized war, and yet the United States on Monday bombed two countries, Yemen and Syria. The United States Central Command confirmed earlier that an airstrike on a military facility of the Houthis in northern Yemen, a Houthi defense ministry building in the Yemen capital Sana'a, was reportedly amongst those targets that came under attack by the U.S. warplanes. That's kind of interesting, Joe.
That's a way more targeted attack than hitting launchers.
Exactly right.
Again, I could use local self-defense as my reason for hitting launchers pointed out to sea. I can't use it for hitting downtown Sana'a or northern Yemen either.
Exactly. It makes me think that they got confirmation of a big fish, in that building, so they went for it. And I could see how a defense ministry kind of building would be a very legitimate target. Let's see. On December 16th, Yemen time, Central Command forces conducted a precision airstrike against a key command and control facility operated by Iran-backed Houthis within Houthi-controlled territory in Sana'a, Yemen, CENTCOM said. Separately, CENTCOM said on Monday that American forces bombed ISIS camps in Syria, killing at least 12 IS fighters. The Pentagon further strikes were conducted as part of the ongoing mission to disrupt, degrade, and defeat ISIS, preventing the terrorist group from conducting external operations and to ensure that ISIS does not seek opportunities to reconstitute in central Syria. So now it appears the Pentagon is a renewed fight against both Iran axis in Yemen and the hardline Sunni terrorists in the heart of Syria. I mean, Joe, it's not like these are Iranian factions in two different countries. No. This is Iranian factions in one country and a radical Sunni militia in another country. So very, kudos for not diluting your efforts there. Let's see. So talking about HTS taking over Damascus, Turkey and Israel have also been involved in bombing in Syria, but Israel has focused its literally hundreds of strikes on degrading and destroying leftover Syrian army equipment. At this point, Pentagon has at least 900 troops occupying northeastern Syrian oil and gas fields, but the Syrian Kurds it supports have increasingly been clashing with Turkish-aligned forces and directly with the Turkish army, which is still mustering forces along the Syrian border. So we'll be talking about that here in a little bit.
T just nailed it, 100% right. I'm not an expert on such things, but I believe you don't need congressional approval if someone shouts "for" as each tomahawk is fired. Yeah, 100% right.
Watcher, can you go to the last story in this
legal
section next? It's a better transition. It's the Turkey one. Yep, that's the one. All right. Turkey masses. Speaking of Turkey and fighting American-backed forces, Turkey masses troops on Syrian border for bigger imminent invasion. Let's see. Turkish-backed Syrian National Army announced that it's the start of a operation against Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces in the northern Syrian town of Kobani on December 17th. The announcement came in the midst of buildup of Turkish troops on the Syrian border in preparation for a possible invasion alongside proxies in the SNA. Turkey wants its security belt 30 kilometers wide on the border with Syria, stressing that it's close to achieving its goal. Turkish military had built a concrete barrier between Kobani and the Turkish border, while Turkish warplanes can be seen flying above. Also, that Turkey is building up forces along the border in preparation for a possible invasion. A Turkish cross-border operation could be imminent. Now, Joe, if I remember correctly, there are U.S. forces in that area. They just occupied a Russian outpost that was abandoned, in northern Syria, not near Kobani, but at the other end of the country.
This isn't the first time that Turkey has ran an invasion directly past U.S. positions, and I think they do it to kind of thumb their nose at us. It's crazy.
It'd be interesting to see if they do everything in their power to make sure that no random stray bullets fly towards the Americans. So U.S. media has also reported that Turkey is building up forces along its border. A Turkish cross-border operation could be imminent. Joe, where could the good people of the audience have potentially heard this as late as last Friday?
Yeah, I heard that we may have predicted that this exactly was going to happen. So
this week,
crazy.
Kurdish forces. Let's see. Wall Street Journal adds that SNA fighters in Turkish uniform commandos and artillery in large numbers are now concentrated near Kobani, a Kurdish majority city in Syria, on the northern border with Turkey. Turkey began building up its forces near the border 2 weeks ago as militants from HTS toppled the government of the Syrian president and occupied the capital of Damascus. Kurdish forces under the YPG began taking control of Kurdish majority areas in Syria in 2012 with the outbreak of the war in 2011. Turkey has sought to prevent Kurds from forming contiguous regions in the areas of Syria on its southern border. Now, Joe, one of the things that'll be kind of curious to me is to see if we see any involvement by the Iraqi Kurds in this area. Now, Turkey has gone into Iraq on numerous occasions to root out PKK terrorist camps, and they absolutely do exist in Iraq. But for the most part, the Iraqi Kurds have been very dismissive of working directly with Syrian Kurds and whatnot. But I just wonder, at what point does that kind of Kurdish connection start to kick in if Turkey starts?
I think always they believe in Greater Kurdistan, and they have never been that keen on respecting international boundaries because they believe that Kurdistan is a bigger place. And in all honesty, that stems from a decision we made at the end of the first Gulf War with Operation Provide Comfort. For those who don't know, that was a U.S. Marine Corps incursion into northern Iraq to set up a Kurdish safe zone, which was the forerunner to what you see now spread across Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. So anyway, there it is. And once again, at the middle of all of the strife in the Middle East, you find an American thing that set it all up.
Let's see. Turkey has sought to prevent Kurds from forming contiguous regions in areas of Syria on its southern border, stretching from Afrin to in the northwest to Kobani in the north center and Hasaka in the northeast. Turkey first supported ISIS and then sent its own forces to invade northern Syria multiple times to prevent such a Kurdish region from being established. Yeah, there were some pretty nasty mistakes that Turkey made in its invasion of northern Syria the first time around. I think mostly they were fighting ISIS at that point, though.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. has been trying to keep Syria partitioned under sanctions. Yeah, this is actually absolutely right. Kurdish official has urged President-elect Donald Trump to prevent a new Turkish invasion. Oh, here's the thing. Turkey's going to do the invasion before Donald Trump ever becomes president. And I'll be honest with you, if the Kurds continue to basically fold like the cheap suits that they've been doing here recently, and I get it, Turkey is a vastly overwhelming military force compared to and they are very much more professional than any of the other forces in the area. I don't think this is going to last long, and I think by the time Donald Trump takes over and gets sworn in, I think we'll see Turkey firmly
Which
occupying.
may well be part of the Turkish calculus in this, right?
Exactly right. I mean, it's kind of just like what Putin's thinking, right? He wants to grab as much territory in Ukraine as he can before Donald Trump takes the oath of office.
Yep.
Yeah. And by the way, I think if they go full bore into this, I think it could get really bloody, because there are a lot of legitimate fighters that have got a lot of training under the U.S. supervision in the SDF forces. So their special forces are actually really good and have operated with our Tier 1 units, in anti-ISIS operations. So it'll be interesting to see how this whole thing shakes out. Of note, the Turks aren't saying they want to take all of the Kurdish region, just that kind of top 30 kilometers of the country. So we'll see if they kind of pull back and like trade space for time, or maybe they don't fight for it. Maybe they strategically withdraw.
If you don't fight for it right at the outset, 30 miles becomes 60, which then becomes 120.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, they have to. That's the kind of calculus that they're going to have to go through.
There's a lesson in there for American conservatives, by the way. Well, if we just give them this and that, and then this, and then all of a sudden you don't have anything left.
Did you see this threat, by the way, by Laura Cox against you in the fan chat?
No.
She says, Dolio,
do you really want the show?
Do you really want to make it out of your land nav course? Do you?
She could try. She could try.
Oh, that's funny. All right. Let us move on to the next story. So this just kind of is emblematic. Nope, that's not the one. We're doing the Watch Syrian Moderate Rebel. This is the collusion between American media and the militant, radical Islamic militants in Syria. So, we talked about the whitewashing of Jelani, and just the whitewashing of Jelani, the whitewashing of the entire movement, right, of HTS in general. It says here, watch as Syrian moderate rebel removes his ISIS patch at the prompting of an American journalist. Joe, do you remember seeing some journalists telling the Azov guys that they're interviewing, hey, you might want to take that sundial patch off, or the swastika or the SS runes off of your gear before we do the interview?
Maybe they should have.
Video footage has recently emerged taken by journalist James Longman, advising rebels in Syria that ISIS logo in their uniforms will be misunderstood by Western audience. Misunderstood, as if there is a misunderstanding to be made, Joe. Yeah, you might want to take that off. Oh, he thinks it's the ISIS logo. I mean, Joe, we made this point that the ISIS logo is very similar, but it is not exactly the same as that. What is it? It's like the Muslim,
it's still Shahada, statement of faith.
Yeah. Statement of faith, right? And but
it's
that
like
being
a Crusader patch,
huh?
But it's like a Crusader patch.
So. Exactly right. That the ISIS logo of their uniforms will be misunderstood by Western audiences. Okay, yeah, maybe. One of the militants who might be a member of the U.S. designated terror group, HTS, or probably another hardline Islamist faction, attempts to claim to the U.S., it does not represent ISIS. Still, the man wearing the patch, the ISIS patch, seems to take the hint and dutifully removes it for the camera. They swear to ABC's Longman that they are not Daesh or ISIS, even while openly supporting its symbols. And part of this is a little bit of the ignorance of the journalist, But really, let's be honest. I mean, is that a hair worth splitting? I don't know that it is, especially when you're a member of an Al Qaeda backed or the Al Qaeda affiliate in Syria, right? I mean, it's six half dozen the other is kind of how I see it.
Well, he's got to sell it to his liberal audience who is looking for a new good guy to get behind, don't you know?
Yeah.
It's like, speaking of liberal audience, it's like when the American liberal educational institutions had children learn the Shahada and the idea of inclusiveness and learning about other religions. They had them recite it in class, which is a very bad thing. You don't make them recite the Lord's Prayer, right?
Right.
We go so overboard on these things and end up shooting ourselves in the foot in the long run.
I'm sure it has absolutely nothing to do with the pro-ISIS and pro-terrorist wing of the Democratic Party. That's certainly not a
Free
factor
Gaza,
here at all.
from the river to the sea.
All authoritarians feel a kinship with other authoritarians of every stripe. Let's see. However Longman intended it, the fighters appear to interpret his comments as friendly advice on how to present themselves and, in fact, remove the patch. So does this mean that this guy is an ISIS public affairs officer now? That's because that's one of the jobs that as a public affairs officer, you got to, sir, put your badge inside, so nobody can see it, or, take that morale patch off, for during the interview, things like that. Understandable that this is reminding people of how American Western media colluded to the rebranding of the Azov battalion. This journalist is, it's got a couple of brain cells to rub together. I like it. They have been accurately describing as hardcore Nazis just months earlier. Let's watch it. Why don't we play the video here of this guy doing the. Hey, don't worry. You don't want to show that off. Can we hear the audio too? I want to see.
I mean, sure. It's mostly them talking in Arabic. So,
but it has subtitles, right?
Yeah, but that's why I played it muted while you talked through it.
Yeah,
ليس الداعي بس هذا عالم داعش نعم هو الاصل ليس الداعي اصل انا بعرف هذا توحيد نعم ايوه بعرف الشهاده مبين هذا خصوصا يعني اللون ما بعرف السياسه الخارجيه السياسيه وخارجيه he takes it off. He's taking it off.
You can pause it. Hey, Joe, one thing I will say is that these guys, let's be honest, right? I mean, we know what HTS is. That being said, the amount of openness that these guys in this video are showing, and what we've seen of just the ability for Western media to kind of come and go within Damascus, and the lack of harassment that you've seen or anything like that, it's been kind of interesting to me, right? I mean, clearly, while there is a hardcore element to HTS, there's clearly a lot more of like, well, these are just the guys that are fighting to free my country, and I'll hang with them as long as the fight's going on, and then I'll go back and farm dirt.
You being a PAO should probably know this better than anyone, but these are the troops they allow them to interact with.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
This is not the vast majority of their troops. These are guys who are handpicked and told pretty much how to behave and what to say in the presence of Western journalists. It's like when we enter a city, we allow only certain units into the city, and there are behavior standards when you go into a conquered city, as opposed to the rest of your heathens you have outside, letting them do what they normally do. It's just handpicked guys. It's not all of them.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing is they do want to present. In order to be able to do that, you have to want to present a good outward opinion to the Western world, right? And ISIS didn't care about that at all. Like, they would never, ever, ever let Western journalists near their fighters, or their people or their cities or anything, they would have executed them immediately. Whereas
You're
these guys,
assuming these are fighters. They're
well,
there in
no, I'm
camouflage
saying
and everything. That does not make them fighters.
I'm saying HTS in general, right? I mean, I'm just saying writ large. I just think it's interesting that they are giving Western media access to, I mean, some are going on these like very tightly controlled media junkets, and others are wandering Damascus seemingly at will. So I don't
think it's at will at all. I think American media is going along with a plan to make it look that way, but I don't think they're allowed to just roam freely at will. Otherwise, we'd see video on the mass killings that are going on.
Well, that's just it. I think we've seen some of the mass graves that they found that they're trying. I think they're purporting to say that, oh, well, these are the mass graves from Assad regime, when in fact it's probably the mass graves that were created by HTS immediately after they took over Damascus. So, it's interesting to see how they're trying to spin the story, right, for the West. I guess the point is that they are sensitive of how the West, views them, which is kind of surprising.
They've caught a glimpse at how many dollars they can grasp. And in order to grasp it, they have to play the role. So he's telling certain of his troops to play the role. He's allowing like media towns, certain areas that the media might not know are segregated, but are nonetheless, right?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I'm just saying
neighborhoods only, right?
It's just a very
any neighborhood that's contested.
Yeah, I guess what my point is, it's a very different approach than any other kind of radical Sunni group has ever taken. So, I mean, I think you're right. I think the dollar signs in their eyes have replaced the Quranic verses. And like I said, maybe he's tired of living in caves and cleaning dirt from beneath us. He wants to play rich Arab warlord for a little while, and wear English tailored suits instead of camouflage fatigues. Though he still wears his Zelensky outfit for the most part that I've seen. Army green. Like I'm ready for. I'm ready. I can party, but I'm also ready for the front line.
One in the suit, and he looked incredibly uncomfortable and unhappy.
Oh, yeah, that one picture that we were looking at on Monday, where the guys were smiling and like, hey, and he's just like,
I will kill you.
I will kill you all. All right, guys, I think it's time we shut down old YouTube and move on over to Bongino's, the best domestic restaurant in the land. If we can, let's share the link out there on the in the chat. Joe, any final thoughts for our YouTube audience?
Look for Turkish spiciness. And by the way, I'll point out, asked what everyone's predictions are as far as the chance of a Christmas terror attack in the U.S., and he's coming down on the sides of yes. I will remind you all, as I frequently do, that we've already had one on Christmas Day, and it was in Nashville, Tennessee. But I would bet we will see something in the coming days, some sort of an attack on the homeland.
Yes, watch out for SUVs of peace.
I hope it doesn't happen. Just as I fly in, I hope it doesn't happen. So I don't need this crap.
Way to jinx it, Scott. Way to jinx it.
Well, they heard I'm coming. What can I say? I'm kind of a big deal, Joe.
You are.
Wait, Joe. Wait till he gets he's about to depart on his flight, and he goes, "Well, I don't know. It seems pretty quiet in America."
Yeah, that's what it always happens.
Mm-hmm.
You see all those movies about hostage taking and drama in the air. Scott would be the one person it would actually happen to.
I was like,
I got to save these people. I'm a PAO.
Hey man, I hear the I hear the metal utensils that you can have on Korean air flights are pretty deadly. If
there you go.
Take a tactical spork with you.
That's exactly right.
All right, everybody.
All right. Guys, it's the link in it's the link in the chat. I don't see it. In the chat. And then you will move on over. All right, there's the link. Loads. I think my connection is bad. There it is.
Ah, I thought it was my connection there for a minute, but yeah, you're better now. You're roboting for a minute there.
Yeah, it's my connection. There's the link in the chat. Please meet us on over at Bonjito's Watcher.
All righty.
Do it.
2, 0, 1.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America. This is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I've got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone.
3, 6, 4, 6.
The chair is against the wall.
3, 6.
The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache.
8, 2, 5.
John has a long mustache.
8, 2, 5, 0, 9.
It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
2, 1.
This